My last job was at one of the big aerospace companies. My job there was to kill a big bullfrog with a shovel. This was a couple years ago when I moved out of town for a while to make my own way. The bullfrog lived in a marshy area near the parking lot, and it croaked really loud and distracted some of the engineers, so it was our job to kill it with a shovel. There were 5 of us. We were called the Frog Team. On our 6th day on patrol, we saw the frog hopping around next to a trash bin and chased into the road, and it got run over by a big truck. They were going to lay off the whole Frog Team after that, but because we'd done such a good job, they said they had another project for us. There was a big slow turtle that lived near some picnic tables that was always opening its mouth at people, so they asked us to crack its shell open. We saw the turtle on the 2nd day, and then spent an hour or so whacking on its shell with our shovels until it finally broke. After that, the whole Frog Team was invited to the company Christmas party. We were a little shy, but a few people came up to us and told us we'd done a great job, and that loosened us up. The vice president of the whole company was there. He was in the middle of the dance floor, rubbing himself through the front of his pants. He came over to me and said, "Let's get out of here. I've got some weed in my car." I asked if the rest of the Frog Team could come, and he said, "No, I don't want to get high with your little gay friends." I told him I wanted to go home, but he grabbed me by the shoulder so hard it hurt and told me, "Come on, we'll just get high for a little while." And then he stuck out his tongue and waggled it at me between his 2 fingers, which I understood to be an obscene gesture. He walked me out to the parking lot, and I saw my opportunity and whapped him across the back with my shovel. The human resources director was at her car and saw me do it, and she rushed over and grabbed the shovel out of my hands. I left the party right then, knowing I'd done wrong. You can believe I felt just awful for hitting the vice president with the shovel. More than anything, I felt I'd let down the Frog Team with my shoddy behavior. I didn't leave the house for a week, I was so depressed. And then one day there was a knock at the door, and it was the whole Frog Team to give me their support. And who else was there but the vice president himself, weeping and opening his arms to me for a hug of forgiveness. I worked down in Cape Canaveral after that, ripping up cats with a big riding lawnmower whenever they wandered onto the field near the launch pad. But it wasn't the same there, so I quit, and I moved back home. I had something special over there with the Frog Team, and I don't know if I'll ever have it again. The cats scream.
It's not so bad here, some people say, though. For example, I found maybe 50 bags of blue corn chips on a big wooden pallet in the woods behind the Route 4 rest area. I find a lot of snacks there when I'm walking through the woods to buy a hamburger or use the big rest area toilets that never clog and flush as if with anger. I found a bunch of snack cakes in the same woods once. Off-brand Ringle Dingles or Dongle Boys or something, but they're usually just as good as the real ones, and cheaper because they're made from low-quality ingredients like sugar sludge, which is the bad part of sugar that falls off conveyor belts in sugar factories. Most of the snack bags were still vacuum sealed, so they were fine. And the ones that were punctured had been coated in an interesting green slime, so I took those home too. I snacked on them for a while until the slime spread to a house plant and then to my sink, and a verdant green tangle of vines began growing out of my pipes, and I had to throw the rest of the cakes out. This other time, I found a sack of baby carrots down near the gravel yard by the Little League field. A big sack, 3 or 4 feet tall, too wide to get my arms around and nearly too heavy to carry. I stored them next to a broken air conditioner unit that was leaking Freon, which I thought would maybe keep them chilled. But in the morning, I discovered a bunch of critters had chewed through the bag and gnawed on most of the carrots. I grabbed my dad's old shotgun out of the garage and filled a bucket with shells and ran back out and fired and reloaded and fired until the bucket was empty. Unfortunately, the carrots were splashed with critter syrup and shotgun obliterated beyond saving. I threw the whole mess into the pond. A couple of critter parts fell and lay astride the blackening trail that led from the AC unit to the water, but I left them there as a warning. I don't know why I get so upset when critters get into my snacks, especially when it's snacks I found for free. I just think it's wrong of them to take what belongs to man. Evil was born in the Garden of Eden when Adam let a critter nibble on snacks from his trees. God blamed Adam for that, of course, but God is the one to blame for me living in this humid place with its swarms of gnats and hordes of critters and toilets clogged with thorny vines that grow up to the ceiling. And God will always take the side of the critters because he was born a skunk.
We arrested the suspect on the corner of Milford and Rock for suspicion of burglary. He was standing on the baseball diamond wearing a brown worm costume made of, I would guess, fabric. We approached the suspect and asked where he'd been. The suspect was uncooperative and was wriggling around to simulate the movement of a worm. We informed the suspect that we were responding to a report of a burglary by a suspect matching his description. White male, approximately 5'10", brown facial hair, brown worm costume. At this time, the suspect became belligerent and accused my partner and I of profiling him for wearing a worm suit. We tried to calm the suspect, but he began rolling in the dirt as worms do. As he was rolling around, a sock filled with jewels fell out of his worm costume, and it was at this time that we took the suspect into custody. As we were driving the suspect back to the station, we spotted a second man in a similar worm costume hopping towards the main road. I stopped the car and approached the man in the second worm costume, but judged that he did not fit the description of the burglar. Upon turning around, I noted that my partner was now wearing a dirt cake worm costume of her own and grinning aggressively. I told my partner to take off the worm costume, and she responded not verbally, but by lunging for my weapon. My partner then drove off with the suspect, leaving me abandoned in the park. At this point, I tried to flag down several passing cars, but none stopped, and I noted that all of them were driven by worms. At this point, I decided to stay off the main road. I knew that the mayor's house was not far from where I was, and he had recently given me a commendation for my above-average police work, so I began walking in that direction. When I arrived at the mayor's residence, I saw the mayor outside and noted that he was holding a trowel. The mayor informed me that the worms were eating away at the roots of his prized flowers. He said he had been up all night killing worms in his garden. I was aghast. He asked me if I had seen any worms recently. A denial died on my tongue. He said that if I had seen any worms, I should tell him because it was the mayor's responsibility to deal with worms in the appropriate manner. His grip tightened on the trowel. I backed away. He said he knew I was no friend to worms, that I would tell him if I had seen any. I stumbled and fell onto my back. The mayor said, "You've made a mistake coming here." He raised the trowel. I felt for my weapon, but the worms had taken it.
I love Ideal Milk.